When John Horgan stepped down as the British Columbia Premier, and the BC NDP had to effectively rig the leadership race to acclaim David Eby as the next NDP Premier of British Columbia, is what we typically call in the business foreshadowing. If you didn't think that David Eby could win a leadership race inside the NDP because he's seen as too radical by those outside of the Victoria progressive bubble, then why would you think he can win a provincial election? Right now, David Eby, in his own riding of Vancouver Point Grey, is basically in a coin toss race against Paul Ranchford, the BC Conservative candidate. It's hilarious to watch. And today I want to go over just how bad the BC NDP re-election campaign has been. It's all attack ads all the time, and they haven't earned a single one of them. Here's the thing with going negative in a campaign. You gotta earn it. If you're doing a good job in government, you can attack your opponents because people already like you. And then when you jab at the other people, you're showing that not only are we good, these guys are bad. That's good. You always make yourself easier to vote for and the other guys less easy to vote for. The problem is that when you're the BC NDP, nobody thinks you're doing a good job on anything. Not on crime, not on drugs, not on schools, not on healthcare, not on the economy, nothing. So when you attack the British Columbia Conservative Party and its leader, John Rusted, because, we found something 4 years ago that you said that maybe certain people might, if they really squint, find some sort of extreme element to, is a stupid campaign to run. Because it just makes people think about the fact that, wait, who are you to criticize these people? They seem pretty rational because they want to stop giving teenagers crack pipe and safe supply drugs. So you attacking them just makes me resent you more. This is the entire BC NDP campaign. Here's a great example that doesn't have to do with the typical things that the BC NDP have been attacking the Conservatives on around certain social issues. Here's something about guns. So Minister Dillon here from the BC NDP says, I am gravely concerned. John Rusted is saying he will direct police to ignore federal gun laws in British Columbia. He's playing politics with public safety. The federal government isn't even actually enforcing the new gun laws because they know that their new gun bans and handgun freezes pull like polio. Nobody actually believes the government is taking gun violence seriously because they're trying to go after law-abiding gun owners, not gang members. They're actually making it easier to get away with carrying an illegal handgun smuggled over the border. At the same time, they want to go after a farmer for owning the wrong type of shotgun. It's absolutely insane. But also, why would you attack John Rusted on this? There are a lot of gun owners in British Columbia. In fact, 315,000 people in British Columbia have gun permits. Out of 5 million people, most of which are not voters, but all 315,000 people who have PAL licenses are pretty much voters, that's like 7, 8, 9% of the electorate. Why, for no reason, would you attack 9% of the BC voting public? I don't know why. This is how attack ads fail. You don't have any credibility on the issues already. The NDP have sucked on crime and violence, and then you attack the Conservatives over it and just tick off a constituency of voters that might have had some NDP voters still in it. There might be some gun owners in certain rural NDP stronghold ridings or some NDP ridings in rural areas they currently hold, who now are going to flip over to the Conservatives because the NDP have declared war on law-abiding gun owners. It's hilarious. I want the Conservatives to win, so I'm having a lot of fun witnessing this. At the same time, it's still slightly frustrating. Also, I just want to take a quick detour and break to make fun of this one post that they made. But first, I'm going to remind you all, make sure to like this video, share it, subscribe. Also consider donating to the legal fund that I have pinned at the top of the comments below. Chinese billionaire is suing us for $900,000, and we've been fighting him because his claims that we defamed him are complete nonsense. And so if you contribute to that, it really helps the show out. I've paid more than $32,000 already defending us. But here's something they also posted. I just want to quickly make fun of this. This looks like the worst version of Guess Who I've ever seen. I don't want to play NDP Guess Who. Oh, my goodness. But the NDP have been posting stuff like this. Rusted has a 20-year record of costing people more, including hiking BC hydro rates by 80%. Now he is proposing further risk meddling in BC's electricity grid that threatens to raise costs on families once again. They just obviously aren't. And again, the BC NDP have no credibility on fiscal issues, so why would you attack John Rustad on them? And by the way, this is people's 2-month residential power bills over the past few years. It's gone up substantially. What really happened with John Rustad back in the day and the Liberal government was that they had raised the amount of money it cost per kilowatt hour for electricity. If you actually go back and you adjust for inflation, they basically just corrected the price up to where it should have been because it was heavily undervalued for about a decade and a half. So it went up by 80%, but it was because it cost basically nothing for the longest time, and it was hemorrhaging money because the BC NDP, before the Liberals came in, were artificially keeping electricity prices down to try and get reelected because their fiscal management on other things had been abysmal. But now I just want to quickly jump over to their main X account to talk about this other attack ad they're running based on an interview that John Rustad had with Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, who was the former BC Christian Heritage Party leader, which makes sense why John Rustad would go on her show. In many ridings, the CHP, when they did run a candidate, got anywhere from 3% all the way up to 12% of the vote. But here the BC NDP says John Rustad believes that climate action is a plot to starve billions of people to reduce the world population. He agrees that Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, and the UN are behind it. He says if British Columbians knew the truth about climate agenda, they wouldn't support it. And this is already too much. Nobody cares. It's just nobody believes that that's actually what John Rustad thinks. And when you see the clip, John Rustad is basically just saying, well, they keep preventing us from being able to grow the food we need, and all these different UN declarations and whatnot are declaring war on people using fertilizer and stuff like that. So he said, basically in the clip, at some point I just have to conclude that all these people who are also encouraging people not to have kids might just not like people that much and want the population to go down. Here's a little bit of the clip. They think this makes John Rustad look bad, apparently.
So if you're talking about eliminating nitrogen-based fertilizer or even reducing it, you're talking about a significant food shortage. 345 million people in the world today are facing a severe food insecurity. You start reducing the food supply, you're talking about hundreds of millions of people, if not even into billions of people, that are actually going to starve. And in good conscience, I can't stand up and support those kinds of policies. For some reason,
and they move on to other clips from the same interview, and I've watched through it. It's really not controversial. And no one would actually disagree with his point that these people, he's saying that these people might be badly motivated if they keep preventing us from being able to grow food for a cheap price. And fair enough. And all the NDP is doing by constantly attacking BC Conservative candidates for an old tweet from 4 months ago or 4 years ago that was probably just a joke, or them just putting a point in a slightly more assertive type of a way, or putting it in a joking way that comes off as harsh or coarse or something like that. All they're doing is promoting the BC Conservative brand, because nobody cares about these tweets, especially in contrast to the BC NDP, again, failing on every single issue voters care about. It's almost insulting to voters when you've been sucking on all of the issues. You've been giving, again, crack pipes to 13-year-olds and safe supply drugs, when your economic plans are all just burning more cash effectively, that you're then going to come over and cast aspersions at the other guys who are actually proposing real solutions to the problems, solutions that are the exact opposite of the current programs that are not just not working, but making the problem worse. The BC NDP are manufacturing the housing crisis right now. It is on them. Were housing prices going up before they came into office? Sure, some of that's mass immigration. A lot of it's just the extremely restrictive house building regulations and codes all over British Columbia that the BC NDP have basically been endorsing, both on the municipal level as well as what they pass on the provincial level. They don't have credibility. And that's why in the polls, you see as undecided voters sort of shrink over time. You kind of have to see the polls in 3-day chunks, because one poll one day to the next can be very different just because it's a different sample size, but the general trend will be correct. As we've seen undecided voters coming down, they're going 2-1 towards the BC Conservatives because the NDP are not running on a good narrative to re-elect them. It's a terrible narrative, and I hope they lose. They're never going to take my advice. They're awful. They just do awful things. They're activists first, and they're representatives of the public second. I wouldn't even say second, probably like third or fourth behind other priorities they each personally have. But right now, what we have going on is the BC NDP assuming that they can just insult their way back into power without actually laying out anything substantially new in their platform. Everything in their platform is just turbo defrosted, microwaved stuff that they promised in 2020 and stuff they promised in 2017. The wording's different, the policy might be slightly changed, but it's the same solutions over again. You'd have to have Stockholm syndrome to be voting for these guys thinking it's going to change. It's literally the same thing. So I encourage you all, if you're in British Columbia, vote for the BC Conservatives, help out their campaigns wherever you can. But the good thing is that David Eby seems to be dedicated to running a campaign that just highlights how bad the NDP is and how petty they are at the same time. They've governed terribly. They're campaigning terribly. They deserve to lose. See you guys later.